Oh, hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Sheila Gunn Reid. I'm the host of our daily news and opinion show, Rebel Roundup. And what we're bringing to you today is the inaugural episode of something we're calling the Buffalo Panel, wherein we devote the at least first half of the live stream to Western related issues. And so it won't just be me talking about these things. On Wednesday, I am always joined by my real life best friend and Regina based co host Lise Merle. But we are also going to be going forward bringing in a rotating cast of panelists. And I am really excited to tell you about today's panelists, not just because one of them signs my paycheck. So that should be an indication that one of our panelists today is, of course, Rebel News boss man Ezra Levant. He'll be joining us from the studio in Toronto, but don't worry, it's not like we have an Eastern elite telling us Westerners what to think and what to say. Ezra is, of course, an Albertan at heart and by birth. And we're also bringing in our friend Corey Morgan. He's a columnist and host over at the Western Standard, but he's also someone who has thought deeply enough about Western issues that he wrote a book called The Sovereigntist Handbook. So we will be bringing in our panelists. Olivia, do we want to do that now? I'm sort of flying blind. There's everybody. It looks great. What a surprise. And I guess I'm going to be leading the conversation. You are going to join me as I learn how to fly the airplane after it has taken off of the tarmac. And so we're in this together now and there's no getting out. So, Ezra, I guess, you're the boss of the company. Why are we doing all of this?
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Alberta, and my heart is still there, although I've been in Toronto long enough that I can no longer claim I'm in exile. This is home for me now. I want to let you know, though, if you go from Alberta and go west, and now you're over the Pacific, and keep going west, and now you're over Asia, and keep going west. If you go west far enough, you will reach Toronto. So I'm actually super far west. I'm the deep west, even though I'm here in the big smoke. All right, I'm kidding. I'm just self-conscious about it. Look, Toronto is the capital of many things in this country. It's the capital of business. It's the capital of immigration. It's the capital of media and political correctness. But Alberta and the West in general is the capital of entrepreneurialism, the capital of the free market, of individualism. And it's a restless place of ideas. So many great ideas that benefit the whole country come from the West. And at first they're sometimes ridiculed, like Ralph Klein, for example. But soon those ideas catch on. Preston Manning on the books was unsuccessful, but he planted the seeds of ideas. I put it to you, were it not for Preston Manning, Paul Martin would not have balanced the budget. It would not have become a sort of political requirement in Parliament for all parties. Stephen Harper, Jason Kenney, so many ideas and thought leaders come from the West. And it is a different culture. It is obviously true that Quebec is a distinct society. Of course, their language itself tells you that. Newfoundland's a distinct society, I'll have you know. And the West is too. And so we have a deep respect for all things Western. You're our chief reporter based in the West, and I think hosting this weekly conversation called The Buffalo, which, by the way, was supposed to be the name of the first province, one province together. Alberta and Saskatchewan were supposed to join Confederation together as a mighty province called the Buffalo on September 1st, 1905. They were split at birth. Anyways, it's our homage to the West. We love the West, and this show, which will be hosted in the West and dominated by the West, is there to prove it. So thanks for letting me rant a little bit. It's great to see Lise, who does such a great job every week. And I've really come to know and admire and appreciate Corey Morgan for his deep thinking on this idea. We've had the pleasure of working with Corey at a few of our town halls recently, and I really regard him as a thought leader, someone who has really pondered how would it work, what should it be, what it should not be. And so to have him on the show, first of all, we love the Western Standard. I have a little bit of paternity in that name myself. And we're grateful to you being so collegial, Corey. We know you work for Western Standard, which on paper is a competitor of Rebel News, but we regard you as an ally first and foremost.. So thanks for being here, and thanks for letting me have a few introductory words like that.
That's great.
Oh,
And it's sorry to interrupt you, Corey. It's great to see a physical newsroom. That's kind of jarring. You don't see many of those these days.
they're rare. Derek's pretty stubborn about wanting to have an actual newsroom on the go.
Okay, I think we'll get right into it just to respect everybody's time. We have the Alberta government launching the Alberta Next panels, where, according to the Premier, they're talking about big ideas like provincial policing, pension reform, and protecting our rights from federal overreach. I guess I'll go to Lise first. Why isn't Saskatchewan doing this?
Well, that is a fantastic question, Sheila Gunn Reid, because if you were in Saskatchewan looking for your provincial politicians, you would be hard pressed to find them, other than outside of very small pressers making very important but small announcements. We are not having conversations like this on the provincial level in Saskatchewan, and we should be, because as if left up to the people, without any guidance or leadership, the people might be apt to do something drastic in the next election, like give us an NDP government, which would be terrible. So it would be great. It'd be great to see our provincial government to do something similar.
Now, I want to show a couple clips that came out of that panel. We've sort of gone through a few of them. One from Jeffrey Rath. So Jeffrey Rath, co-founder of the Alberta Prosperity Project, was at the Alberta Next panel, and he questioned the Premier over federal tax collection on the open mic portion. So let's show that clip, and then I want to get some feedback from you guys about what you think went down there. Olivia.
Ottawa continues or has ignored us and will continue to ignore us. It doesn't matter what we do here tonight or what the outcome of this is. They will continue to ignore us. There's one question only, that needs to be on a referendum, and that is, do you support Alberta exiting Canadian Confederation and becoming a sovereign nation? At that point, then you'll be able to negotiate with Ottawa. Then you'll be able to negotiate with Quebec. Without that, they will continue to ignore us. If they do not know that we are serious and we can leave at any point in time, we will not ever get a pipeline to the Atlantic Ocean. It is time to put the separation question on a ballot so that Alberta people can decide. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say.
Okay, that was the wrong clip. That wasn't the Jeffrey Rath one, but that was just a clip of just what happened on the open mic. I think the Alberta government might think that this Alberta Next panel could placate people. But I think they're going to get a lot of that on the open mic portion where people are saying, look, we have to vote to separate, even if it just means a negotiating tool. Corey, what do you think?
Well, yeah, Premier Smith's in a tough spot because while the majority of her party membership tend to be sympathetic towards independence, the majority of the province isn't quite there yet, and she has to appeal to the majority of the province to try and stay in power. There's concerns among people already dedicated to the independence approach or referendum approach that this is going to be like Jason Kenney's Fair Deal panel, where a bunch of hearings were held, a bunch of talk was had, and nothing happened. Mm-hmm. So is this actually going to lead towards something, towards changes, whether it's a referendum or things like a pension plan or collecting our own taxes, or is just an exercise that's kicking the can down the road? So I believe that part of her challenge as she holds this challenge around the province is to make sure that people feel confident that this is more than just a navel-gazing exercise and it's going to lead to something, or if anything, it's going to divide the party potentially and cause some issues from within.
Lise?
I love how the government of Alberta is saying, hi, we would like to talk about pensions and policing and some of our smaller issues, and the people of Alberta come in guns blazing like, nope, we need to threaten to leave. We need to threaten to leave right now. And there's no way that the government of Alberta can pretend that they didn't hear them loud and clear. I think this is going to be something we hear at every single one of their Alberta Next panels, and it'll be interesting to see how the government of Alberta responds. Because Corey's right. Of course they have to ask the people of Alberta what they want next to happen, but they can't ignore the humongous elephant in the room, where a great many of their supporters are saying, we've had enough asking the federal government to play nice and we're done. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, sorry, go ahead, boss.
Oh, I was listening to that question asker, and I don't know who that was. But I like what he said, and here's my thoughts. There's a saying in politics, have as many people to your right as to your left. That's one of Morton Blackwell's rules. And it's good for Danielle Smith and for her party and for her other MLAs and for her cabinet ministers to know that there are people to her right. And so they cannot be ignored. They don't have to necessarily be obeyed to the letter, but it's always a good... if you have as many to your right as to your left, you're going to walk a straight line. You never want to be in the position where you silence that one side, then you'll start to curve to the left. And others need to hear it too. People, by definition, it makes Danielle Smith look moderate and reasonable if you have people asking for her to be harder line. So I am in no way objecting to that. And it shows the media, it shows Ottawa observers that there is something cooking in Alberta. The entire federal government was recalibrated after the last separatist referendum about 30 years ago to detect any inkling of upset into Quebec and immediately ameliorate or in some ways attend to it. They don't have the same seismograph in Alberta. So you have to magnify the sounds of discontent for Ottawa to hear it. They don't care as much. They don't have as many political operators on the ground. They don't have as many cabinet ministers. So it's important that Ottawa and the Ottawa media know that there is discontent in Alberta. So I'm pleased with what I just saw there. One last thing I would say is whenever you open up the mics, it's probably a good idea to have a few of your friends there who are saying something that you want to be the topic of conversation, because if you're having a forum, especially a traveling forum, and you're opening it up to anyone, other people will say, now I've got a platform for my agenda. And that's fine. That's part of democracy. Just make sure that her agenda, that she knows what it is, and she has people there to elocute it, because others will make their points too. Anyway, I was pleased with what you just showed.
Yeah, me too. Now, we've found the clip of Jeffrey Rath, co-founder of the APP. He's questioning the premier over federal tax collection on the open mic portion. And I think she's going to get a ton of this as these things go forward. And kudos to the APP, because these are tough questions that people want to ask.
But go ahead.
My name's Jeffrey Rath. I'm from Foothills, Alberta. So, Premier, the first thing I wanted to say with the greatest of respect, when you say there's no legal mechanism to stop sending taxes to Ottawa and collecting 100% of the taxes in Alberta, with the greatest respect, you're incorrect. The legal mechanism is Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act, and that's voting Alberta the hell out of Canada on a clear question.
Thank you, Jeff.
Now, and then my last point on that is simply, on a moving forward basis, I'd like to see a straw poll in this room, and that's one, not do we want to spend another 5 or 10 years bashing our heads against an unamendable constitution versus how many people in this room want a clear vote on independence within the next 12 months.
Okay.
So thank you.
But go ahead.
I actually disagree with him that there's no mechanism by which to withhold taxes to the federal government, because Scott Moe did that with the carbon tax and basically said, come and get me. And they didn't, because, well, frankly, I don't think there are big enough handcuffs. He's got ham hocks for fists, but he called their bluff. They didn't do anything when he said we're not sending the carbon tax.
Yeah, the federal government was completely, he called their bluff is what he did, and they didn't do anything in response. However, when you're talking about income taxes or taxes that can't be argued constitutionally, I think that's probably what the question was. We didn't hear the question in the lead up. Why don't you just turn off the bags of money going to Ottawa? And Danielle Smith replied that there's no legal mechanism.
Yeah.
But I love that Jeffrey Rath just barges in and goes, well, actually, there is a solution to this. Where Danielle Smith, where premiers or Danielle Smith would have said, there is no way for us to really do that. We have agreements in place, legal requirements in place that make us send the money to Ottawa. And in comes Jeffrey Rath with an absolute solution. Like, I love the sound of that. I love the sound of that. Well, if we don't have a legal mechanism yet, let's use the legal mechanism that we do have. Let's find solutions. So
Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, well, currently, I mean, part of what that question comes into, and I know Jeff always wants to go to the final nuclear solution,
Right.
which, I'm sort of on board
That's
with.
his thing.
I don't think there's quite enough Albertans on board for it yet, but I like moving towards it. He's doing a lot of work towards it, as is the APP. But getting back to that, I think it's an extension of what's been talked about since the Alberta agenda. In Quebec, there's two separate tax returns, your provincial and your federal. And they're talking about splitting it. So Alberta would have its own provincial form, its own federal one. It doesn't solve every problem, but it keeps inching us towards that door. It takes away one more question mark. People say, well, what will you do if you become independent? How are you going to deal with tax collection? Well, as a matter of fact, we have our own agency. We have our own setup. We'll just change the rates and then just, stop with the federal dispersion of it. So it's another one of those things kind of along the lines of the Alberta agenda moving towards it, but it doesn't stop things like GST, remittance, corporate taxes. It's a little more nuanced than that, but it's one more step that could be pursued.
an incremental step. Yeah.
Incremental
steps towards sovereignty. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to show people just how much money they're sending to the feds, to have those two separate forms. I think it's important in the arguments of transparency. But also, speaking of incremental steps, I don't know if you guys saw that Fraser Institute report this week. Median workers in Alberta could receive 72% more under the Alberta pension plan compared to the Canada pension plan, just by repatriating our pension. That's how much more we could save. That's another incremental step that Albertans could do. And I don't think it has been properly explained by the provincial government to people on this issue. I see that there's a lot of opposition to an Alberta pension plan. And I think when the dollars and cents are explained, I don't know how anybody could object to it.
Yeah, that was one of the things the Alberta Prosperity Project was really pushing on as well. And the provincial government sort of blew the rollout when they started talking about a provincial pension plan, and they kind of lost the narrative, and it allowed opponents to really inject fear, because people are fearful. And I saw that when I traveled to meetings. There's a lot of seniors on fixed income. They're afraid of change. And even though you explain, by the numbers, you would certainly be better off under a provincial plan, but it's not been successful in undercutting that nervousness with them. So the numbers are there. The benefits are most definitely there. And it would certainly put pressure on Ottawa, because if they lost that extra revenue that's shoring up the plan from one of the provinces, they're going to have to really approach the rest of Canadians to explain why they're going to have to cut benefits or raise premiums. But the Alberta government really has to frame it better. The Fraser Institute's doing what they already should have done.
I think the obvious thing to do is to set up an Alberta pension plan and let people choose it if they want. So they don't have to leave the CPP. And I think almost immediately when people say, it hasn't been a catastrophe, I'm getting more bang for the buck, people will move over. But I think Corey's right. And one of the things Donald Trump has insisted on is not doing things that would scare seniors, not talking about those kind of entitlements. He's got bigger fights to fight. Let me use one more Trump lesson, because there are some lessons with a man who wants to do something radical. And in his case, the re-migration of millions of people he calls invaders. Who is his architect of that? Well, the man on the ground who's getting it done is named Tom Homan, and he's a military-style, can-do, ass-kicker kind of cop character. But he's using a strategy quarterbacked by the Deputy Chief of Staff named Stephen Miller, who is using such creative legal means. For example, a law from the 18th century, I think it's called the Alien Act or something, like to deal like laws that have not been used in centuries, legal tools that have never been used. Maybe the Democrats have used them, but never a Republican. And I think that Danielle Smith needs to get legally savvy quick. Let me tell you two recent examples saying she's not. In her transgender compromise, which was quite balanced, she, rather naively I might say, did not include the notwithstanding clause in the first draft. Well, gee whiz, what do you think a Trudeau court is going to do to that? Find it a violation of the Charter. Why not just dispense with this Laurentian taboo against the Section 33 notwithstanding clause, just put it right in there. And you'll have the CBC huff and puff about it for a couple of days, but so what? It's part of the Charter. So, and I see just the other day, I almost couldn't believe it when we covered the story. I sent a note to Sheila saying, is this true? And I checked it out. It's true. That, again, on the trans issue, the province is saying we can't stop out of province trans athletes from competing in Alberta. Really?
Sure you can.
Who told you that? That's exactly what you can do. You can't stop Albertans in other provinces doing shenanigans there because you don't have, but you have absolute jurisdiction in Alberta over things that happen in Alberta. And if you don't, you need lawyers. And I know that I myself like lawyers too much. And people from the conservative side, especially populists, have a well-deserved skepticism and even in some cases a dislike for lawyers. Lawyer jokes. There's a lot of reasons we don't like lawyers because sometimes they're on the cutting edge of things of legal moves we hate. But on the same side, a smart, talented, creative lawyer on our side evens the odds. So I would say this. I think Danielle Smith, who herself is not a lawyer, and I don't think she particularly thinks like a lawyer, needs to find herself a Stephen Miller, needs to find someone she completely trusts to quarterback the legal strategy. And it may mean going to the private sector. It is not an unusual thing for the government to hire private lawyers who are experts in their field. If you dip into the lawyers at the Justice Department, odds are you're going to get that bureaucratic NDP mindset. A career lawyer in the government of Alberta based in Edmonton is going to be a lefty, is going to be on the wrong side of all these issues. Danielle Smith needs to find herself a Stephen Miller, a killer lawyer who is not crazy, but who is radical. They're different. And she needs to take a lawfare approach to it, because I promise you they're going to take a lawfare approach to her, and they already are. So whether it's knowing how to navigate things on the constitutional file and sovereignty, or how to get her agenda through prickly courts, she needs a legal dream team. I don't think she has one. I think she needs to get one. I think it's got to come from outside government because the government lawyers aren't it. It would double her effectiveness. She will be undone in the courts more than she will be undone at the polls. Thanks for letting me rant.
No, I'm glad you did. Okay, let's, my job to keep us on track here. Just moreover to Ezra's point about the Premier needing to have people to the right of her. She, after her, I think, I don't want to say heated, but probably energetic, frisky, Alberta Next panel, she tweeted out that Albertans aren't afraid to speak their minds, and that's exactly what we saw at the Alberta Next panel. These conversations matter because they shape the bold future we're building together. Now, I appreciate her saying those things insofar as she's not responding the way Jason Kenney would to those sorts of criticisms that her panel faced at the mic. What did Jason Kenney call his own base that disagreed with him? Lunatics? Kooky? What did he say? He said he needs a new base. He called separatists in Alberta grifters. So instead of responding in language that you could expect from the likes of Justin Trudeau to talk about Albertans, she actually said, like, look, people are frustrated and we need to talk to them. She at least acknowledges that these people, by and large, are in the UCP fold.
Yeah, well, she's showing respect to a different point of view and giving them that time at the microphone and recognizing, and it's a balancing act, not coming out right and saying that she necessarily agrees with their views, but they have every right to express them, and it represents a large segment of Albertans. I think what's going to keep coming to a head, though, is people want to head to the referendum. There's all these other questions, but as you can see, all roads keep leading to that referendum. I think, again, she shouldn't take a side on the referendum, perhaps, but she needs to facilitate and make it clear it's going to be held. So that way that the energy for those who want full independence can be directed towards there and making that path. Otherwise, everybody will just keep answering at these panels, look, these are great ideas, but we need the referendum. So I think that just needs to be peeled off and moved towards it.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't think there's a leader in the country who does it better than Danielle Smith when she says says without saying, the people of Alberta are smart enough to decide for themselves. She gives the people of Alberta the credit where credit is due. She knows that the people of Alberta have had it with the federal government and have some real burning ideas about what happens next. And she's unafraid to listen to them. Nobody listens better than Danielle Smith. Nobody.
Yeah, I can't imagine that she thought that these Alberta Next panels would go any other way than they exactly are. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she had to have expected that her panelists would be getting an absolute earful about separation on the mic.
And they should be unafraid to get an absolute earful. These are the people that they're meant to govern. These are the people that elected them. They should be unafraid to listen to them, and they're doing a bang up job of listening.
I was a young boy once, and I was caught up in the excitement of the populist conservative movement of the day called the Reform Party. Although Preston Manning sometimes claimed it wasn't conservative, I remember a speech he would give where he says, like a hockey team, it had a right wing and a left wing. Sometimes he sort of talked in a Christian way, that he thought there could be a grand harmony of left and right. It was an unusual opinion. Anyways, I probably went to 100 events with Preston Manning. I was the head of the Young Reformers at the University of Calgary, and then I became sort of a busybody troublemaker. And then later I went to work for Preston, and I observed a strategy or a tactic that he had. And he used it especially when he was at big party conferences where he wanted to do big things. For example, I remember when the Reform Party just ran candidates in the 4 Western provinces. And I remember when he wanted to expand that nationwide. Well, that's a tough move, isn't it? When your motto is the West wants in, and you're trying to fight for the West, and now you're going to run candidates in Toronto. Well, Preston would shape the question, and he would provide 2 different answers, and he would put it to the ballot, but he would frame them in a way that you knew which one you sort of had to do. He sort of pre-cooked the answer, and it wasn't particularly democratic, but it was endorsed by the people. It's just that the choices he put to them were his own. And Stephen Harper later criticized that. My point is, he knew the desired outcome for his plan, and he got it. He didn't win everything. In the end, he was turfed by Stockwell Day supporters and then turned on them. But my point is, what is Danielle Smith's plan? I think she would like to remain a premier within Canada. I think so. So how can she craft a strategy and put questions to the people that take some of the energy from the independence movement and apply it to get the things that she wants? If that's what she wants. I don't think she wants to be the first leader of an independent Alberta. I don't think so. Is she using this as a bargaining chip against Ottawa? I don't know. But I'm just trying to think to how Preston Manning managed some very challenging issues, and he had a tactic that he put the choice to people. I don't exactly know what Danielle Smith's proposed future is. Maybe she's still figuring it out, and that's another thing. I mean, I like Danielle Smith. I've known her since we were in university together. I don't quite know who her inner kitchen cabinet is. I don't mean her legal cabinet, but who does she call when she really wants an honest chat and honest advice from people she believes are looking out for her? I don't know who that is, especially on this issue. You're right, Lise, when you say that she listens very well. She does. But you can't just be like a seat cushion and have the impression of the last person who sat on you. You have to have your own core values. You want to absorb information and you want to tip your hat to other forces within democracy. It's got to be some compromise and log rolling. It's got to be. But what is her destination? What is her destiny? Where does she want to go? Preston knew it. I don't know if Danielle Smith knows it. Maybe she does. Is she articulating it? Does she have really trusted lieutenants, including, like I say, the Stephen Miller character who's going to be the absolutely killer strategist and tactician? I don't know. But I think she needs that because she will be up against every force of the establishment in Ottawa. And frankly, Pierre Poilievre is going to run or campaign for in the United Canada. Of course he is. He's part of a Federalist Party. And the media all will run against her, and the unions will run against her, and the deep state will run against her. So she's got to get smart and tough. And I'm not saying she can't. I'm just saying she's got a limited amount of time. What do you think of that, Corey? Do you know where her destination is? Do you know what she's trying to do? And do you know who her trusted advisors are?
I sort of agree with where you're going on it. I don't believe she wants to become the president of an independent Alberta or something like that. But she also understands there's just a growing rift that she has to somehow fill. As for who's inside, it's interesting. Rob Anderson, is her chief of staff. That's not the kitchen cabinet sort of thing, but he was quite vocal prior to joining Premier Smith again in this government as the Free West group that he had going with Barry Cooper and others. So if there's any voice talking in her ear, it's probably Mr. Anderson's lately, and he's certainly a strongly independence-leaning person. So with the meeting coming up in Edmonton next, I think now that they've gotten one meeting out of the way, we'll get a better idea of how they want to direct and move this towards. They kind of got that first one done, whether they were happy with how that went or not. We'll see with how they manage the next one.
Yeah, we'll see if they tighten up the mic.
Yes.
That's for sure. Hey, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip over the Poilievre clip because we sort of reacted to it on the live stream yesterday. But I want to talk to Corey about this article from the Western Standard from Jen over there. Alberta at odds with Quebec in willingness to kill the dairy cartel. And this is written by Jen Hodgson, who does a great job over at the Western Standard. Corey, I know that you, like me, are vehemently against supply management because, well, I'm a farmer on the other side of it as a price taker, not a price setter. I don't get my prices artificially inflated. In fact, a lot of times I deal with tariffs. But this is really something that has been holding up trade negotiations with the United States. And instead of just figuring out a way to unwind this Soviet-style nonsense, this is the thing that, Canadians are facing tariffs because of.
Yeah, well, and it's turned into a regional rift now because it has been slowly but surely growing disproportionately within Quebec where those quotas are assigned, and Western agricultural producers who, look at it, we're in the breadbasket in North America. We could have some incredible dairy operations out here if only we could expand the ability through those quotas. So the interests are quite different. Quebec has that interest in protecting this market that they've sort of sucked in from the rest of the country through the supply management system over these years. And the West is realizing, whoa, we're losing out on a whole bunch of potential, not to mention now that it's causing a trade rift on everything. And it's come up into the discussion. So there's going to be a difference of opinion. But we know probably where the Carney government's going to land when they're taking a side on this. And, well, it's just one more time where the West can scream and shout, but our interests aren't going to come before Quebec's.
Right. And Ezra, this is an issue that we're not going to see any daylight between the Liberals and the Conservatives on. We know how influential the dairy cartel is with the Conservative Party of Canada. They can make and break a leader.
Yeah. And we've seen that in the Conservative Party's leadership in the past. I was just thinking, when you say no daylight between the Liberals and the Conservatives, remember the last election, how the Liberals and the media always insisted that the Conservatives prove they are as anti-Trump as the Liberals are. And no amount of proof was enough. And the Conservatives were outdoing themselves, In fact, they were even dabbling in some anti-American language.
Yeah, for sure
and
they were.
They're going to do the same thing on the Alberta independence question, because everyone on this panel is thinking about the West right now. But what decides federal elections, in which Pierre Poilievre has a keen interest, is Ontario and, to a degree, Quebec. And so every time they ask Pierre Poilievre or one of his backbench Alberta or Saskatchewan MPs about independence, they're doing so with the thought of an ad to run in Ontario and Quebec in mind. And so you will see Pierre Poilievre not only oppose independence, but be called upon to oppose it more strenuously and more vigorously than anyone else. So it's going to be an interesting phenomenon when you have backbench Conservative MPs, and I know you asked me about the dairy cartel, but it is sort of related, is that Alberta MPs, including Conservative MPs, have a very Western-friendly point of view. A lot of them have that genetics of the old Reform Party that was just those 4 Western provinces the West wants in. But they are going to be tested by the media and by the Liberals and by the Liberal media for purity tests every day. Will you denounce independence, and will you applaud dairy cartels on command? Do it now. I know I just asked you yesterday, but do it again. And if you don't do it again, that's proof that you don't. And like it's going to be a very, I think the greatest weapons the Liberals will field against Alberta independence will be Alberta Conservatives who are not permitted to speak candidly because it would contradict the federal mission of their party. I'm brainstorming here, just brainstorming.
Yeah, it'll be like wear the ribbon, march in the parade. You must. You must.
Where's your ribbon? Where's your ribbon?
You know what? We've hit over halfway through the show, so I know that Corey has a job he's got to get back to. I know, Ezra, you do too. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Thank you, Corey, so much for giving us a little bit of your time today. Let us know, Corey, how our viewers here at Rebel News can find your work and also pick up a copy of the Sovereigntist Handbook.
Certainly, westernstandard.news, all my stuff is up on there, and the Sovereigntist Handbook, you can find it on Amazon just with a quick search. I really appreciate the invite to come on, and it's always a pleasure to talk to a great panel like this.
Great. Thanks, Corey. We'll have you back on again very soon. Thanks, boss. We'll talk soon. Let's hit an ad break, and then we'll come back with the rest of the show.
Alberta powers Canada, but Ottawa keeps limiting our potential. The Alberta Next panel wants your ideas to strengthen our sovereignty within a united Canada. Help decide what's next for Alberta. Visit alberta.ca/next.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of assault-style firearms.
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted. While criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. By delaying and dismantling unjust legislation, by confronting policy at its source, like on the global stage at the United Nations, through our unmatched record of political lobbying and our Save Firearms program, actively saving firearms from government crushers in real time. And we're not done yet. Join us. Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Do you agree with me? It is time to make Canada great again. And that is why we at Rebel News have teamed up with MCGA hats to introduce, well, the fashion sensation of 2025. Oh, and by the way, these beautiful hats, they are made in Canada. We don't rely on cheap imports coming over from China. So what are you waiting for, folks? Show your pride. This is the perfect thing for a patriot to wear, or maybe there's a patriot in your life that you would like to gift such a hat. Please go to mcgahats.ca. That's mcgahats.ca. Don't be shy about it. Wear this cap. Let everybody know you want to make Canada great again.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Okay, well, that was fun, that first half of the show. I love listening to Ezra's little stories about when he was a younger man.
So good. Just so good. And what I'm left with after talking to Ezra and Corey Morgan, whether we were talking about pensions, whether we were talking about using the notwithstanding clause, the dairy cartel in Canada, or electoral reform, and the way that conservative federal politicians can't advance Western interests.
They can't.
For fear of upsetting Eastern voters. What that just showed to me is the futility of staying within a united Canada, because the way that Confederation is laid out is that we are bound to lose every single time as Westerners. Right. We cannot win. It's been, the whole system has been designed so that we cannot win ever. And so just having that conversation has just rooted me deeper in my separatist sentiments. And I'm so happy to have had that conversation with those two gents. They are just beauties, aren't they?
So smart on this stuff. And it is true. Even our Western politicians have to advance Toronto ideas. Yes. Because that's where the election is won or lost. And that is the problem with all of this.
Yes.
That's the issue.
Which is why Pierre Poilievre running in Alberta is going to be so terribly interesting. Oh, it's going to be interesting. But I loved Ezra's comment that Danielle Smith is going to have opposition from the federal government. She's going to have opposition from the unions. She's going to have opposition from the left. She's going to have opposition from the media. But the crazy thing is the people of Alberta are not stupid, and they are rapidly waking up to how these things work, and to not get, and despite all of that already happening, they are forging ahead with the question on the referendum. So this is all just so fascinating to watch unfold.
I'm a little sad I let Ezra go before asking him about Project Fear, because that is what they called the anti-Brexit campaign. When the UK was wisely leaving the European Union, the other side of it was they literally called their project to scare Brits into staying within the EU, Project Fear. And it was, you're not going to be able to get food, you're not going to be able to travel, like all this stuff to scare them away from their own independence again. And that's going to happen. So I think Albertans, Westerners in general, should just hunker down, because they are going to level all the fear at you, and you just need to think your way through it, ask the questions, and not get consumed by the hyperbole. Make your own minds up. Don't have the fear mongers make them up for you.
We are seeing this happen in real time in Alberta and Saskatchewan, especially as it pertains to the NDP and their public sector unions. They are going 100% on the fear train, and it is the job of Saskatchewan and Albertan people to do their own research, to make up their own minds, and to forge ahead with what is going to work best for them. People of Western Canada are smart people. They know what's best for them, and even more important than that, we know what doesn't work. We know what's not working, and we know what can't be fixed. So
all right, let's get into I have to tell everybody about our birthday party.
Yeah. Oh, I was looking for dresses yesterday, Sheila.
I don't know if I should upcycle one or buy a new one. We'll see.
A new dress. This is a new dress event. It's a 10th anniversary party.
Right. And everybody out there in the real world, you are invited to join us. So we're having our 10th anniversary, our 10th birthday at Rebel News, which is actually, I think, 2 days after my actual 10th anniversary at Rebel News. because I started in September because my little excuse hadn't started school full time. And so then when she started school full time, like, I guess I got to go to work then. Anyway, our birthday was actually back in February, but we were in the throes of electioneering. So we just didn't have time to stop and have a party. And we'll never have time to stop and have a party, but we are going to anyway. And we want you to be with us. So it's Thursday, September 18th at 6 p.m. at the Carriage House Hotel and Conference Center in Calgary. We love the Carriage House. Live music, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, meet and greet, photos with your favorite journalists, and Lise and Sheila overdressed. So we wanted you to celebrate this with us because there is no Rebel News after 10 years without all of you at home cheering for us, supporting us, and helping us in all of our fights, not just for ourselves, but so many of you out there along the way. I heard one of our supporters once describe what we do as not just a job or a company, but it's a ministry. And that I try to evangelize the good word of freedom and small government. And along the way, we get some takers. And then we step in. When we see a problem, we just don't report on the problem. I don't know if I could work for a company that only allowed me to report as a bystander on a problem.
Right.
If there's something we can do to fix it and help, we always do. And none of that, again, we can't help people if you don't help us. So that's why our birthday party is yours too. Go to happybirthdayrebel.com and I'll see you in September.
You can't wait. Can't wait. Cannot wait for this party. This is going to be the party to end all parties, Rebel fam. And we want to see you all there.
You know how I feel about live music.
You know how I feel about cocktails and hors d'oeuvres.
Yes.
I mean, you have me at cocktails and hors d'oeuvres.
I do know those things.
But you have that, the live music and all of our Rebel fam there and everybody. The funnest part about hanging out with Rebel viewers is we are all on the same page. Like we all have similar interests. You never have to explain a backstory. And Rebel viewers are truly the most interesting and the most hilarious and the best people to hang out with. So we'd love to see you there.
Now, again, that's happybirthdayrebel.com. Let's get into some of the Mark Carney tariff stuff because, well, I'll show you the clip as one astute CBC panelist pointed out on I think it was At Issue, one of their unwatchable panel shows last night. She won't be asked on again anytime soon. But anyways, Globe and Mail article says Prime Minister Mark Carney says he sees little evidence that it's possible to strike a deal with President Trump that removes all the U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. That's what the Globe and Mail is reporting. Well, I'll be darned. It's almost like he ran a campaign saying he's the only guy who could get those tariffs removed. And now he's just like waving the white flag. Which is what he knew from the very beginning. There was no way, but he was, talk about Project Fear. He basically said, I'm the only one to fight back against the great orange monster. And he ran with his anti-Americanism rhetoric. The boomers who vote liberal bought it hook, line, and sinker. And here we are. And Carney is admitting that he probably knew from the very beginning there's nothing that he could do to change this. Well, except deal with the dairy cartel, but that's another story. Now, let's show the clip I alluded to. I think it's CBC. I think it was At Issue. Kate Harrison says Carney billed himself during the election as the guy that could get a good deal for Canada. And wait till she tells you about the tariff rates now versus then when he said that.
I want to start with you. It is a fact that other countries are not getting deals that don't include tariffs at this point. Was this the inevitable conclusion of where things were going to land for Canada?
I'm getting very confused, Catherine, about where to put my elbows. They're up and they're down, and if they keep moving that way, we're going to look like a bunch of chickens. The Prime Minister has an expectation management problem. You referenced it off the top. He billed himself during the election as the guy that would get a good deal for Canada, and the reality is that our tariffs are higher today than they were on election day. We had the doubling of the steel and aluminum tariff. We now have this August 1st threat. So we don't appear to be closer to a deal than we were on election day. And that is a problem for the Prime Minister because he billed himself as the guy to get it done. So what can Canada be doing? If tariffs are the reality and other countries have them as their reality, what are we doing to systemically make investment in Canada better? So far, the proposal has been to expedite energy projects to, oh my goodness, 2 years, while other jurisdictions are moving faster than that. The U.S. is changing things like their corporate tax rate, or they're at least looking at systems to attract more business investment, and that's totally absent the tariff conversation. So we seem to be very focused on, how we might tax bourbon and ketchup a little bit more to hit back against the Americans, and not addressing some of the big challenges that exist for Canada's economy to thrive.
You do say we do not appear to be any closer to a deal. I think we have to acknowledge, and it's something we heard a few times during this show, we just don't know what's happening behind closed doors with negotiations. We may well be closer to a deal.
CBC.
We may not. No one.
Part of the challenge I would observe is that it's been the Prime Minister that has been setting deadlines that the U.S. seemingly is not abiding by. We had this conversation about an agreement to agree around the G7 within 30 days. Right. Then that got moved to July 21st. Now it's looking like August 1st that ostensibly something could happen. And the U.S. are certainly not the ones setting these deadlines. So again, the Prime Minister
the August 1st does seem to have been set by the
so
President.
was the 30 days exiting the G7. So my point is that the Prime Minister is the one that has raised expectations, and now he is having a difficult time meeting the expectations that he has set.
This is part and parcel of Mark Carney suffering from big dog syndrome. Showing up on the scene, having all of the solutions, setting these aggressive targets with the United States, when the United States is basically saying to Mark Carney, we don't care what you want. We don't your timelines really don't mean anything to us, to be completely honest. And Mark Carney is learning the hard way of setting those high, hard deadlines and having his biggest trade partner say, you're so small, you're inconsequential.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and he's I'm the one who's going to fight the tariffs. And the tariffs are higher now after he was elected than before during the campaign. Mm-hmm. Somehow he's worse than Trudeau on this issue.
That's a very low bar to sink to, but yet here we are doing it. And don't forget, that's because of Doug Ford coming out in the media and running his mouth that steel and aluminum tariffs are as high as they are. If Doug Ford would have remained conciliatory and with a little bit of, little bit of finesse, and yes, humility is a great word. Steel and aluminum tariffs wouldn't be what they are right now for Canada, exporting into the United States. But yet here we are. Here we are. Leave it to the libs.
Leave it to the libs. Now, Carney today was touring, naturally, a steel plant in Hamilton. And so we have some of those clips coming in. And somebody asked him, hey, are we supposed to be elbows up or are we elbows down today? What's going on? And so we have that clip here.
You told Canadians that you would be elbows up, and they appear to have largely given you a mandate to get a good deal from the president. But thus far, we have not seen that Canada has gotten basically nothing. And Canada also had to give one of its bargaining chips when it comes to the digital services tax, something other countries like the UK did not give up in their deal with the US. How do you still convince Canadians that you are really elbows up?
Well, look, we are in the midst of long now and tough negotiations with the United States. And we're working for the best deal for Canada. We have put in place a series of retaliatory measures, including in the steel sector. We have secured tariff-free access for a number of Canadian goods. In fact, the percentages are very high in terms of outside of the most affected sectors, steel being one of them, autos, aluminum, forest products. The vast majority of Canadian goods and services are tariff-free. That is not the case for most other countries. We will continue to work constructively for a deal, but it has to be a deal that works for Canadians and Canadian workers. And part of the reason why we don't have a deal is that deal is not yet on the table.
I didn't hear a word he said because all I could see was those two actual steel workers in the background looking like they were in a hostage video. They wanted out of there so bad. The one guy wasn't even turned towards the frame. He's like this, looking this way. And the other guy is just like shifting. Every time Carney started talking, I thought he was going to jump out of his skin.
Yeah, it was pretty uncomfortable to watch. But if you were if you were a steel worker working in an industry with some of the highest tariffs between our two countries, you would be uncomfortable. You would be
no kidding.
absolutely uncomfortable. And having Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, standing at a podium saying everything is fine and rosy, and just never mind all of the tariffs that we're being smacked with as it pertains to this industry. Well, I mean, how duplicitous is that?
Right. We've got Chris Dacey confronting Prime
I just
Minister
love him.
Carney. He's a menace to the left in Ottawa, and I
He's a
just
darling.
love it. He's
Yeah.
like just a one-man wrecking squad. They don't know where he's going to be next, what he's going to do. They probably are like, I hope Dacey's not on our block today. He's confronting Prime Minister Carney on tariffs yesterday in Ottawa.
Mister, is a tariff-free deal still possible? We're looking for an English clip, sir.
103 conflicts.
Is a tariff-free deal still possible, sir?
Mr. Carney, you said you had no possible conflicts of interest. We now know you have 103. Mr. Carney, Mark, look inside yourself. What do you have to say to Canadians who feel they've been lied to? Mr. Carney.
103 conflicts of interest. You lied.
Mr. Carney. Mr. Carney also said he only owned cash and real estate. We now know he has over 500 investments, 90-something% of them in the U.S., 3 total in Canada. No answers for Legacy Media today, no answers for Dacey Media either, as Mark Carney rolls out of here. Tariffs still in place. Lies aplenty.
Look inside yourself, Mark.
Look inside yourself, Mark. What do you have to say about all of those conflicts? What do you have to say? And of course, he has nothing to say, because
Right.
it would be very, very difficult for the Prime Minister of Canada to come out and say, all right, like I lied through my teeth. I'm a snake oil salesman, and I sold you a bill of goods that I can never cash. Like,
Yeah.
it'd be real hard for the Prime Minister to say that. Yet that's where we find ourselves, Canada.
I'm trying to just weed out the things we can talk about before we have to wrap the show, because Wednesdays is managers meeting stays at Rebel News.
Can we do Danielle Smith in the books?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, well, Premier Danielle Smith was called on her radio program by a vapid leftist demanding to know why she would ban pornography in schools. And she had a fantastic answer. She tweets, I won't apologize for protecting Alberta's children from images they shouldn't see at school. We'll continue to work with educators to ensure materials available to children at their schools are age appropriate. Full stop. We should listen to that radio call-in.
Do we have the radio call-in?
It's in the link.
Do we have that, Olivia? Let's listen to it. Yeah, okay, I see it. It's 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Maybe we don't need to listen to it all.
We
A
don't.
retired teacher, no surprise there, texted
Vapid
in.
leftist, yes. A
Yeah.
kid named Karen. So let's listen to Karen defend pornography in schools, everyone.
Before we go on, just remind me to tell you a story, because I got a similar letter to this.
Oh.
And I talk about it on the gun show today. I recorded yesterday, sort of similar to this, but it's like an anecdote from somebody.
Okay.
But anyways, remind me to tell you about it.
Listen to the left, Canada. This is what the left will.
These
will
are the
defend.
teachers. These are the
Yeah.
smartest people in the room, you guys. Okay,
Yeah,
they
it's
know better
incredible.
than you.
Retired teacher has texted in, and this is an issue that's gained a lot of traction in this past week. Karen says nobody would agree that it is acceptable for young children to be exposed to books with sexually explicit photos in library books, but this is not happening. This is misinformation. So
Lies.
how is it that a very small group of radical parents can garner so much
parents.
action when thousands of concerned, nonpartisan Albertans are being ignored when they voice their worries about underfunding of education, overcrowded classrooms, lack of resources such as EAs and librarians,
two are
and
not
poor curriculum development.
mutually
These
exclusive.
are current issues that must be addressed right now and could be addressed, but instead you are fussing about 4 books. Time to get priorities straight.
Well, I don't know. Pornography
my
is a real
God.
problem for young adults. It's so accessible, and I don't think 7-year-olds should be exposed to pornographic images. Here's the thing, Wayne. If I am not permitted to describe to you the kind of images that 7-year-olds are seeing because it would offend your audience, then we shouldn't be showing them to 7-year-olds. I would encourage anyone with the parental warning label that we have online, go and look at the images yourself, and you'll be scratching your head wondering how it is any of these books ever got into elementary schools in the first place. So yeah, I think it's important that we make sure that young children are exposed to age-appropriate material only, and that they're not exposed to pornographic images early. But that being said, we can solve all of the problems at once. We have the ability to work on many things at the same time.
To have an education
and right
ministry.
now we're in the middle of a consultation with the public and with teachers, including members of the ATA who are helping us out, and I'm grateful to them for that, on aggression and complexity in the classroom. That is the biggest issue that we've been hearing
we
from
can cut
teachers,
here.
that in
Yeah,
some
that's good.
situations.
I'm glad she mentioned that she can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, you have an entire education ministry that can deal with more than just one issue. Dimitrios Nikolaides, our education minister's a sharp cookie. He can get this smut and homosexual erotica out of the hands of elementary school kids, and also deal with class size issues. Like there's a bunch of bureaucrats working down at that ministry. They can do things. But this also is indicative of the lies told by the media around that announcement. You know,
Your
where they
report on
think
this,
it's no
Sheila?
big deal.
Your report on this, Sheila, was such an eye-opener for the people of Canada to distill and break down exactly and expose exactly how these vapid left-wing activists work in this regard. Because taking pornography out of school is a good thing, okay? And pornography is in school, from British Columbia all the way to the Maritimes. These crazy left-wing activists, mainly represented by CUPE, the teacher librarians, okay, that work in the schools, that choose the books, that work at the ministries of education across the country, have introduced these books into our school systems and our school libraries, make them available for children. By the way, parents, no school needs permission to give a child a book. Okay, this is why they did it, because parental permission is not required. And Sheila did such a beautiful job exposing how all of this works in the mainstream media, and the mainstream media propping up this false equivalence. These are not books that are going to ever going to positively impact the life of a child. These are books that are pornographic and erotic in nature. And no child should ever, ever, ever be subjected to this within the confines of a school. But please go on.
These are deeply harmful books, deeply damaging books to young little ones who might be accidentally have them in front of them. Like, this is stuff that just damages little kids right to their core.
Yeah.
And so the response from teachers, retired or otherwise, should be run, don't walk to get this stuff out of the classroom. Instead, they're saying, oh, it's no big deal. And in my video, I showed you how the media got the story wrong. They reported that stuff like, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret," stuff that touches on, like bodily functions and medical stuff and anatomy and health and relationships, like hand holding and kissing and breastfeeding. They reported that was going to also
Yes.
be caught in the net and removed from libraries. When that was made explicitly clear to journalists in all of the embargoed materials 3 full hours in advance before the announcement, and they wrote the story wrong anyway. And I know because I had those embargoed documents too, and I got the story right. So they willfully misled.
They
And now,
deliberately misled the public on this issue. And for teachers like Karen, okay, there is no faster way to get it wrong than to take the word of a retired teacher. Okay, every time a retired teacher pops up and says, this is not happening, this is misinformation. Well, guess where Karen gets her info from? Guess where she gets it from? She gets it from the mainstream media who have, or the ATA, who have deliberately misled her. We should not take a retired teacher's word on anything. Let me just tell you something, Karen. Number one, you can kiss my freckled butt. There is no such thing as a radical parent. And number two, you have no idea what has happened in Canadian schools in the last especially 5 years. The way that these materials have been resourced, purchased, and
mainstreamed.
100% within our public school systems in Canada is mind-blowing. And unless you are a parent who has dug into this, like so many parents have, you would not know what's going on.
Yeah.
So do take my invitation, Karen, to kiss my freckled butt. Thank you.
I would call parents radical because they want this obscenity away from the hands of 8-year-olds. What an insult.
Because we don't want our kids to have secrets, to learn things and then not tell their parents what they're learning, to make life-altering decisions without consulting with parents. That's what makes a parent radical. No, girlfriend, that's what makes me a good parent.
Right.
What makes parents and teachers both good parents and teachers is what we exclude from our children's lives. And I will die on this hill. I don't let my kids have ice cream for dinner every night, even though they tell me that they want it. Okay, they would stress to me that it is so important for them to have ice cream. I, as a parent, know that that's not the best for them.
Right.
I exclude that. Same with pornographic materials in schools. Same with gay straight alliances in schools. Same with gender stuff in schools. Same with rainbow flags in schools. It's all the same. It's what I want excluded from my children's upbringing. That organizations like the Alberta Teachers Association, the Saskatchewan Teachers Association, and the Canadian Teachers Federation.
I can't even believe we're at a point where someone would call you a radical parent because you don't want gay erotica exposed to your 8-year-old, but this is where we're at. This is where we're at these days.
It's they would label you a radical parent, if you say, I don't want you exploring my children's sexuality with them. That's what makes you radical in Canada now. Like these people are way off the deep end.
Yeah, they're next level weirdos. They're just absolute weirdos.
Yeah, but good for Danielle Smith. She's the first again. She is such a leader in this regard. We were talking earlier in the program about wielding the notwithstanding clause, and if anything, that is a lesson that we've learned is that you must wield it as it pertains to this issue because these public sector unions are just so wild about promoting it.
Yep. Okay, I dug up the Daily Cringe when we were on the first ad break there.
Okay.
This is quite something.
Ooh, I can't wait. It's my favorite.
Well, I don't know if this is going to be your favorite. It comes from Libs of TikTok. Zane Edward Arcand, a gender fluid, polyamorous, sometimes female, because you could just be one of us, we're a feeling. Anyway, just arrested for allegedly trying to burn down Dickinson County, Michigan Republican Committee headquarters. The Peace and Love Rainbow people. It's all about love is love, you guys. Arcand admitting to throwing, yeah, exactly. This is nightmare stuff. Admitted to throwing the Molotov cocktail at the Republican Party office to send a message against the corruption. Send an email then. Don't send a Molotov cocktail. Arcand is charged with arson and manufacturing, possessing a Molotov cocktail. Can we listen to that? I didn't listen to this. Is that a vampire? This is the Lost Boys, right?
It looks like a corpse.
Anyways, let's listen to this.
Okay.
I have realized I am sexually fluid, gender fluid, ambiamorous, and also my social identity, besides my sexual orientation and gender identity, and all that other stuff it all fluctuates. So sometimes the gender identity part, I have a few aspects that fluctuate in prominence, which some of them themselves are fluid aspects of gender identity, and one of them sometimes for a few weeks, sometimes to a few months, stops at female gender identity. One of them doesn't. I have realized.
This is a person who has severe mental illness, and a fractured personality. And I was not expecting that baritone voice at all. That shocked me.
Okay, so but here's the crazy thing, Canada, this is the type of person that your public educators want to introduce your children to. This is the kind of person that public educators in Canada would
We need
hold
their
up
literature in our libraries.
as a primo example of humanity. I look at that and there is absolutely no way that person would ever get within 250 yards of my kids. And yet, look at this.
This is wild. And yet this is like, we gotta embrace all these different identities. And I look at this and say, no, we don't.
Imagine
We definitely don't.
Imagine going into a change room and experiencing this.
Oh, my
Imagine being in a
goodness.
locker room and experiencing this. I mean, like this is imagine being forced to try and access a shelter space,
right?
And having to share a shelter space with this. This is the reality for Canadian women.
Good grief! It's
This
almost
guy
like these
opts
people
into
aren't
woman. Yep.
violently mentally ill.
Holy Hannah!
I thought that voice just sort of was not at all what I was expecting. It was like, dude wasn't even trying,
But Sheila, if he opts into if he says he's a woman, he is. We must believe trans women are women, and that's a great example of one. You believe? Hey, Canada, do you believe that's a woman?
I would more likely believe that he died 3 weeks ago, and just was reanimated, than I would believe that he is a legitimate woman.
Oh, that's going to give me nightmares.
Yeah.
Again, this is my favorite segment of the show, Canada, because it just goes to show you the craziness of this world that we're living in right now.
I would rather meet that person at the morgue than in the washroom. Like, it just
without question, and yet that man has all the rights of a woman in Canada. It is crazy.
To be in our prisons with us.
Prisons, shelters, change rooms,
Yeah,
locker rooms,
actually,
sports.
this guy was charged with arson. And so in Canada, thanks to Justin Trudeau's changes, he would be in a women's prison. We're the daily cringe. Our country's the daily cringe at the end of the day.
Basically, yeah, Canada is the daily cringe. Yeah, that's right. But truly haunting. And I think it's really important to show people the craziness of this radical gender theory that has been taken up by the federal government. The other day, Tamara Ugolini had a beautiful piece on the Pride Progress flag and how public sector unions have just gotten completely carried away. But we still must work against this, Canada. We must upset this like they did in the United States.
Yeah, I think we're just at the tipping point, and it's going to swing back the other way, and they're not going to really like it. But that's okay, because
they'll get over it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I think that's the show, you guys. Let us know in the comments, what did you think about the Buffalo panel? We're going to try her all again next Wednesday, where it's Lisa and I, and 2 more panelists, where we discuss Western issues and the news of the day with them. And hopefully with you. I forgot to tell everybody at the beginning of the show that if they wanted to have their say, they could have pitched in a super chat. But like I said, I'm learning how to fly after takeoff. So we'll figure it out next week. And if you want to support our work, you can leave a super thanks in the form of a paid chat. Olivia, is that everything for us? Okay. Lise, thank you. We'll see you Tuesday.
Well, it's my pleasure, my darling Sheila Gunn Reid. And thanks so much for having me, Canada. We will see you next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Olivia and Efron, for putting the show together. I know we tried something new, and I thought it looked great the way you guys had it laid out. Again, let us know if you thought that they did a great job laying out the live stream. I thought it looked delightful, and I like the new graphics. And that's the show. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see everybody back here again same time tomorrow. And as David Menzies always says, stay safe and stay sane.
Hi, my name is Simone Gavros. I'm with CHCH News. My question is more of a local question about crime. Within the last few months, 2 random innocent bystanders were killed in 2 separate shootings. And in the latest shooting on Friday, that suspect is a 17-year-old who police are still looking for. There's also a lot of concern when it comes to repeat offenders. My question to you today is, what is your government doing to keep communities, including Hamilton, safe when it comes to gun violence?
Thank you very much for the question, and my sincere condolences for the victims of the direct victims of these crimes, their families, but also for the communities and the concern and anxiety that horrible crimes like this create. One of the things the federal government is doing, and we are making a huge emphasis on this, is to control our border better. Because I suspect, and we'll see when this individual is caught, that gun came from the United States. Vast majority of firearms, illegal firearms, firearms used in crime come across our border. And so what we've been doing in recent months is making very large investments in controlling those borders much better. We have to do more, but we're talking thousands more CBSA, Border Service Agents. We're talking drone surveillance, helicopter surveillance, working more closely with the United States on both sides of the border, both elements of the border, including addressing the scourge of fentanyl. The second aspect to your question, which your question touches on and the tragic situations touch on, is bail reform. And the importance of bail reform, particularly with respect to repeat offenders. We have commitments on that. We're working with the provinces on those issues. I'll be meeting with the premiers next week. I'm sure that's one of the elements that we will discuss, and you can expect legislation from this government in the fall.